to Jonathan Taylor. Huge hole. He's at the 30. He's going to go. 10, 5, touchdown. Jonathan Taylor made a man miss the line of scrimmage and then runs it into Pater for a one-handed INT. Are you kidding me? Kenny Moore.
What a play by Nyheim Hines.
Horseshoe is back, baby. The horseshoe is back.
What's going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of the Bring the Juice Colts podcast. Today, we are continuing our look at the Indianapolis Colts positions. Today, we're doing the tight ends. Now, this video is going to be a little bit shorter than the wide receivers for obvious reasons. There's not as much questions at the back end of the roster for this group. So it's just going to be not as thorough, not as many guys to talk about. So just so you guys are aware, Derek Larger, of course, here with me, as always, guys. And today, let's start with the mainstay at this tight end position, Mr. Jack Doyle himself. Now, man, Jack Doyle, I love his story. I love ever since he came into the Colts as an undrafted free agent. He's worked his way up from the number 3 tight end position all the way to the number 1 tight end position when Coby Fleener and Dwayne Allen were not brought back. And he's been a mainstay ever since, man. He's been the veteran presence in that locker room when they needed it. He's made a Pro Bowl. He's been really, really solid for the Colts. Not anything special, but he's been solid. And I think that's something that I'm sure Andrew Luck appreciated, Phillip Rivers appreciated, Jacoby Brissett appreciated, and Carson Wentz will appreciate. And last year, with the turmoil at quarterback the last couple of years, Jack Doyle's numbers haven't necessarily been phenomenal or eye-popping. I mean, last year, kind of looking at his stats, he had 23 catches for 251 yards and 3 touchdowns. He did have a touchdown in that wild card game as well. It seems like he always has touchdowns against the Bills for some reason. You think back to that 2017 game and that blizzard, essentially. Jack Doyle had that game-tying touchdown. So, I mean, he's just a guy that consistently is there. And I think he's just such a solid all-around player. He can catch the football. He can block really well as a run blocker. And he's just everything you're looking for in terms of just a leader in the locker room.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, don't let his age fool you. I mean, Jack Doyle can still do a lot of things. He is the veteran in this locker room. And, even though his numbers are still diminishing year in and year out, because, there's other guys that are becoming more of receiving threats at the tight end position than Jack Doyle. I mean, he could still be really good for a scheme fit on certain types of plays. Say it's like a 3rd and 2 or something. I mean, I always find it fascinating that Jack Doyle is always the fallback guy on those 3rd and 2 play action runs where the defense thinks they're running and then Jack just does the little flat on the opposite direction of where the run is going. And I mean, Jack Doyle just seems to get first downs off that, man. I mean, that's a lot of what he does. I think that this year the numbers are going to continue to go down again. I think he's probably going to be tight end number 1 for a while because of, again, the experience that he has and, the blocking fit that he is, because he's a great blocker, no question about it. But, in terms of receptions and whatnot, it would very much surprise me if Jack Doyle were to get 25 receptions this year. Like you said, had 23 last year on 33 targets. Would very much surprise me if Jack Doyle actually did get 23 or 25 or more catches, because I don't believe that's what's going to happen with Jack Doyle here. We're going to talk about the other 2 guys, but yeah, again, Jack Doyle does the dirty stuff, does what you ask him to do. And you got to respect that out of a guy who's been in the league for a while, had to really scratch to get to where he's at now. And, I think he's going to be in charge of helping this run game out on that outside and, at times helping a certain left tackle out for the first couple weeks of the season, blocking to protect Carson Wentz's blind side. So I'm sure Carson Wentz, like you said, is going to appreciate that.
Yeah, and you mentioned the dirty work. Like, a lot of people just think Jack Doyle is very expendable, and I just don't understand that logic, because Jack Doyle has been so key to this offense for so many seasons. He may not get, 50 receptions for 800 yards every year or anything like that, but he's so invaluable to what this Colts offense wants to do. He can catch the football, like I mentioned. He can run block, and he's just the veteran voice in that locker room, right? Mm-hmm. And I think those things can't be understated. Like, if the Colts were to trade away or cut Jack Doyle, there would be a lot of backlash from the locker room, I feel like, because he's just one of those guys that is just so consistent there. He's so likable. He's so loved by his teammates, and he's going to be so helpful for Carson Wentz here in Indianapolis. And so I think I've expressed, man, how much I love Jack Doyle, just because he's not the guy that's always going to pop off the page to you, but he's always the guy that's going to consistently be there and put it in work and be reliable. He's Mr. Reliable, man. And that's something that can't go understated. But yeah, you mentioned the other tight ends. We'll talk about the other guy here who's been with the Colts for a couple years. That's Mo Alie-Cox. Now, physically, Mo Alie-Cox is one of the most physical tight ends and most physically gifted, I should say, tight ends in the league. He's 6'7", nearly 260 pounds, I believe. So he's got some size to him. He's got like mitts for hands. I mean, this guy is a freak. I mean, how many times did you see the Colts just throw the ball up and Mo just literally just out jump everybody because he's so ginormous? But the biggest question for Mo has been consistency as a receiver. He's probably the best run blocker that the Colts have at tight end just because of his physical presence alone. He can just get guys and just really physically dominate them at the line of scrimmage. But, it's weird because he had a really, really good September, and then it seemed like the Colts kind of went away from him, kind of puzzling to us why they did that. But I think he showed a little bit more of development in his receiving game this last year, which I thought was good. I would just like to see personally the Colts use him more in the red zone.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, so many different things that Mo Alie-Cox did. Like you said, in September, I mean, he was the number one tight end in the NFL for the first month. I mean, the numbers he was putting up, is incredible. Had 31 receptions last year, ended the year with 31 receptions for nearly 400 yards and 2 touchdowns. I'd like to see that touchdown number go up. Like you said, with the red zone, let Mo Alie-Cox dominate. The dude is 6'7". He's 6'7". He's a basketball player. The man can go dunk the basketball. He's got oven mitts. He's got ginormous mittens of hands. I mean, holy cow, they're ginormous.
This is like the size of his hands are two of mine.
Yeah, his hands are twice the size of mine. I mean, we've seen the play in 2018 where Andrew Luck throws it up. Just let the man go up and get it. Just let him go get it. I mean, there is not a cornerback nor linebacker in this league that is dominant and physical enough to be able to stop a 6'7", 265-pound tight end who can jump 11 foot. There is not one of them. There is not. So that's what I'm hoping Carson Wentz finds out, because Carson Wentz, we know, likes to throw to tight ends, and he certainly likes to throw it to a tight end who can go up and get it. And this is the guy. This is it right here. You don't get much better than this. Like you said, I'm really glad that he showed this last year what he is capable of doing. Hence, if you give him the time to do so, right? I think over half of his catches came in the first half of this, or first month of the season. So you're right. They did kind of get away from him, kind of unsure as to why. But like you said, can run block just as well as any of them on this roster. Just as big. He's bigger than all the tight ends on the roster. He's just as athletic as the rest of the guys on this roster. Maybe not in speed, but he certainly can move. And he's definitely the tallest one. He can definitely go and get it. I mean, this is a guy that I really hope they continue to use in the red zone a lot more often and in the middle of the field at times. I mean, he does have some ability to get some of the balls and move. I mean, I think Mo Alie-Cox, I think he's in for a big year this year. If Carson Wentz is wanting to throw a couple of honestly, if there's one person on this roster that I'm confident in saying, okay, Carson, go throw it to this guy, just 50-50 ball. Mo Alie-Cox might be the one that I'm actually the most confident in saying he's going to come down with it.
Mm. Yeah, he physically is just a monster at the tight end position. And you mentioned Carson Wentz. I was going to mention that as well. I wonder how much that addition is going to help the Colts in the red zone, specifically a guy like Mo Alie-Cox.
Yeah.
We know it's been documented how much Carson Wentz likes his big body receiver, right? How much he liked his Alshon Jeffrey, how much he liked his Zach Ertz, who's a big red zone threat for him. Now you got a guy like Alie-Cox and you got a Michael Pittman. You got to think the numbers are going to go up. I just have this feeling the numbers are going to go up for him, and they kind of have to, right? Because it was just puzzling that they didn't use him more in the red zone. Now you do wonder how much is that scheme? How much of that is just the fact that Phillip Rivers didn't like to do that? There's a lot of things that could go into that. But I think one thing is for certain, with Carson Wentz, that potential for the red zone for Alie-Cox to get a lot more looks in the red zone, I think it definitely skyrockets. So want to see that actually be put into action, because this guy is still fairly young, physically gifted, and that's just a nightmare for anybody to try to cover. So use that to your advantage. The Colts have done such a great job of using these guys' skills to their advantage, but I would say they've kind of dropped the ball on Alie-Cox so far. I wish they would use him more. And they still have the chance, obviously, to do it, but that's something, if I was being critical of this Colts offense and kind of the scheme, I mean, they're brilliant, right? They out-scheme got people all the time. But if they could use Alie-Cox in the red zone a little bit more, a place where they notoriously struggled last season, that would be a big win.
Yes, absolutely right. Absolutely right.
All right, let's look at the last tight end here who we think is going to make the roster. That's the 4th-round pick the Colts had this year, Kylen Granson out of SMU. Now, Kylen Granson is more in the mold of a receiving tight end, right? He's more in the Eric Ebron type of role, the guys that can stretch the field vertically. And it's wild, Derek, because you look at this tight end room, you got a lot of everything, right? You got a lot of guys that can do different things very well. You got your reliable tight end. You got your red zone tight end, your physical tight end. Then you got your receiving tight end and yak tight end and Kylen Granson. And we've talked to him multiple times. We know how much he believes and is confident in his ability to really open up this offense in this tight end room vertically. And we think we're right there with him. We think he has a really good chance. And we think Carson Wentz is really going to enjoy a tight end that can do stuff a lot differently than the other tight ends on this roster. What are your thoughts on Kylen Granson?
Yeah, you said it perfectly. This is the yards after catch guy right here. This is the one. And like you said, this tight end room, when you look at it from top to bottom, regardless of who's 1, 2, or 3, I mean, each one of them has a skill set that complements this offense so very well. Jack Doyle, the Mr. Reliable, the guy who can go get a few yards here and there, but is mainly the blocker. Alie-Cox, who is a big blocker, but a guy who's a big body that can catch it in the red zone. Then you talk about a Granson who's 6'2", 245 pounds, but yet has the ability to make plays with his feet after the catch, right? Has good hands. His route running is crisp. They've said that the Colts really have seen great progress in his route running so far, which is exactly what we wanted. We kind of said Trey Burton was going to be that way. Trey Burton, a better route runner than what Eric Ebron was, but Ebron just had a little bit more of the big play potential. Granson could be that guy in the middle of the field that racks up those yards, and then you have Alie-Cox be the one that's going to get the majority of the looks down in the red zone because of his sheer size. Now, I'm not saying Granson can't do that either, because Granson certainly has pretty good pinpoint ball skills when it comes to the jump ball. So, I really am excited again to see Granson. I've been saying it multiple times on this podcast that I think that Granson's going to be one of the most impactful rookies on this roster for this next year. I truly still believe that. And I'm very excited to see what he's able to do now that you got a Carson Wentz who is going to throw the ball all over the field. I'm really excited to see the potential of a Kylen Granson right now.
You might be noticing a trend if you're looking at what we've talked about with these position groups, especially running back and tight end, and even wide receiver to a small different degree, right? You got different guys that can do different things for this offense. And that is going to be the difference, in my opinion, because we know the Colts can use them in their ways, but this is just giving Reich and company more checkers to play with, right? More money, more chips to play with, I guess is the proper term there. But you know what I mean? They have more ways that they can attack you now. And if you're an NFL defense, that is absolutely terrifying, that you do not know who you can defend. And that's exactly, man, how Frank Reich and this offense want to attack you. They want to wear you down. They want to beat you. They want to scare you. And that's what they're doing, man, with all these additions to the tight end room, especially as well. That's what they're doing, man. They have all the different ways that they can take you. They have that three-pronged attack, just like they have at running back. You know, they have 4 different receivers who do different things. It's actually kind of incredible when you think about all the different skill sets they have on their offense.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, look at each position group. I mean, it really does break down that each player, you know, they have some similarities, but the main part of that person's game that they'd use to play to their skill set, all of it's different. You can use each different guy in a multitude of different ways. And that's great because then it makes it so much harder for a defense to scheme for one individual player outside of saying, okay, well, we think that this guy is going to probably get the ball more often due to the fact that we're in a specific part of the field. But again, it makes it harder because then you have to place one guy for each individual play on a different type of player that you never know what's going to happen. So, I mean, it keeps the defense thinking one thing, and that leaves the game open so much for you to throw an oddball out there, for Frank Reich to get creative and to think outside the box and run a play that the defense isn't expecting. That's exactly why it's so important to see all these guys with different skill sets getting a chance to play.
Mm-hmm. All right, guys, that'll do it for our look at the tight end room. Let us know what you think about all 3 of these tight ends, different ways that they can attack and help this Colts offense potentially be a better offense than they were in 2020. Appreciate all your support. And as always, go Colts.